Hi, everyone. One thing before we get started, we are asking for you to bring us your listener questions. We are excited to produce 2 episodes for you featuring listener questions. Questions like, what diet should I eat while on chemo? Or what's going to happen to my love life after cancering? Or maybe something simple like, where do I get the best information on the internet? We're here for all of those questions and we'll get you the answers. So go to our website, www.cancering.com, and click on the questions page to submit your questions on the form.
You cannot hate yourself or shame yourself to health, but you can love yourself to health. I finally decided to work on my relationship with food, and I realized after a while, if I worked on the relationship with food, why I was eating what I was eating, why I was gravitating towards certain things, the scale would follow. And it did, but I also learned how my body pays attention to what I put in it. When I give it stuff that it can work with, it's fine. I am doing things now that I would have never done before because I wouldn't have had the confidence to really do it. I'm not any smarter than I was before, but I certainly see myself very differently. So it's not surprising to me that other people do as well.
Welcome to the Cancering Show. Today, you're going to meet a woman who holds the unique distinction of being a doctor, a 3-time cancer survivor, and my patient. I think she's amazing. Her name is Dr. Gretchen Holmes, and it seems like I connected with her the moment we met. Gretchen holds a doctorate in health communications with a graduate certificate in medical behavioral science from the University of Kentucky. Presently, she works as the designated institutional official. That means she's in charge for graduate medical education. That means residencies at a health system in Mississippi. And on this episode, we're going to talk about Gretchen's cancering journey, kicking cancer's butt 3 times, and not being defined by her disease, as well as acquiring body and health awareness. And most importantly, she's going to tell us how she lost over 100 pounds and has kept it off. Cancer is just something that we all have to recognize, acknowledge, cope with, live with, struggle with, rage upon, crush, and even thrive with. This show is more than knowing and fighting or beating cancer. It's more than just relaying science, hope, and technology. Together, our purpose is to demystify cancer, take away as much fear out of the diagnosis, treatment, and process as we can, defeat its grip on our lives. This is The Cancering Show. Welcome, Dr. Holmes. We're so excited to have you in the studio.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, when we met, I did not picture this moment occurring, but can you take our listeners a little bit through the journey that got you from there to here?
Sure. So about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer, and I live over in Gulfport, and we didn't have anybody like you over there. So I was gratefully and thankfully referred to you, and I remember meeting you before I had my surgery, and we talked through what was going to happen. And then we had the surgery, and I remember my very first post-op visit when everything was fine. You took great care of me, and then you sat me down and you said, we have to talk about you being a cancer survivor.
Yeah, and that is part of this cancering journey. When we say the Cancering Show, we talk about not just the people who are on treatment, but there are millions of cancer survivors in the country, and we want to really help people to understand what that means. What does it mean to you?
So this was actually my 3rd time having cancer. And the first time was 20 plus years ago. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And I had all the surgeries, but they chose not to do the treatment, the radioactive iodine treatment at the time. I don't recall why, but we didn't. And then about 5 years later, and this is going to sound really kind of crazy, but I woke up one day and a voice in my head said, you need to go to the doctor. And I was having no symptoms. I was doing my 6-month checkups with blood work. There was nothing happening. And I was at the University of Kentucky getting my PhD, and I called to make an appointment. And I found out there was one thyroid cancer doctor. And I thought, oh, good Lord, what have I gotten into? Because I had been in New York City, and I thought, it's not going to go well. Come to find out, he was one of the leading cancer doctors in thyroid cancer, trained at NIH. one of the leading clinicians in research. And so I got an appointment, and he did all the tests. Come to find out, I was never going to respond to the blood work because I'm one of the few where that blood test does not work for me. And number 2, I was stage 4 cancer because my thyroid cancer had come back, and and it had spread to my lungs.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first 2 journeys with cancer, and it's had a huge effect on me. I think one of the things that's most profound is that when you have thyroid cancer, everybody tells you how lucky you are that you got the good cancer. And while I was really grateful to still be alive, it has had profound effects on how I live my life. Once you become a thyroid cancer survivor, for example, I have very decimated salivary glands from the treatment.
Oh, no.
Which means, and nobody told me about this, I was going to have dry mouth for the rest of my life, which meant I was going to end up losing a lot of teeth because nobody told me to use the extra fluoride toothpaste.
Oh.
So there was that. And then there, of course, the fatigue and everything else, and plus all the weight that you gain from having thyroid cancer. I mean, I used to joke, because I used to do stand-up comedy years ago, that I had the only cancer that made you fat. And I did, because I gained 100 pounds in like 6 months. So being a cancer survivor for the last 20 years has meant mainly just showing up and being able to try to achieve my goals, but doing it very tired because physically I was not in a good place and haven't been for a long time.
And now, Gretchen, it almost seems like this more recent cancer diagnosis lit a fire under you and turned you on to some of the benefits or the motivation of being a cancer survivor.
I think it did. I remember the conversation when you said, we have to talk about you being a cancer survivor, and you said, but then you already know all about that. And then you said, we really need to talk about your weight, which is something anybody who has a weight problem does not want to do. That's a very hard conversation to have, and I expect from a physician side, it's not an easy one to have either.
It's not. It never is. And I think what I try and do is to very much make it the other thing. It's not you. It's not Gretchen. It is the weight. It is a separate thing from you as an identified human being. And I think being able to separate it in that way recognizes that it's not your fault. It's not who you are. It doesn't define you. And also that it can be something that's separate from you in terms of being able to do something about it instead of saying that it has to be a mantle that you wear for the rest of your life. And yet, I never want my relationship with a patient to be affected or for anyone to leave my office feeling that even if they never lose a pound, that we can't have the exact same conversations about being cancer survivors. That the conversation that I have with patients often is just that there are a lot of health problems that are related to excess weight, and that uterine cancer for many women is the one that is diagnosed early and 95% survival. But people might not be as lucky if it's diabetes or kidney failure or heart attack or stroke as their first disease related to weight. And so just to see it for what it is, that here is an opportunity to find motivation to do something about it.
I agree with you. And I think one of the challenges for somebody who's always had a weight problem is a lot of physicians approach it as, you clearly have a weight problem. What are you going to do about it? And not present themselves as a partner, as a resource, providing any kind of tools, which leaves you going, well, I knew I had a weight problem when I walked in the door. I still have a weight problem, and if I knew what to do about it, I probably would have. But when we had our conversation, it was so much more about being supportive and letting me know that it's really something we got to talk about because I care enough to talk about it with you. And what are we going to do? But you were so matter-of-fact about it, there was no judgment. And so 6 months later, I developed diabetes. I had been flirting with it for quite some time, and I finally crossed over, and my primary care doctor sat down, who I happened to be his boss at work.
I love this part of the story.
I know, and so he had to sit down, and he said, "Young lady, we now have to have the talk." And I thought, oh, I know. And he said, "We have to do something about your weight. You've now crossed into diabetes." And it was a very brief conversation, but he too did something very genuine, which was I knew he was a partner, and he was my primary care doc, so I knew we were going to see each other a lot. Plus, I see him every week at works. But there was, again, no judgment, no blame, just we need to work together. How do we do this? And I went home that night, and I joined Weight Watchers. I was mortified. I was scared to death. That scared me more than probably the cancer diagnosis did, because I knew that was stage 1. I knew it was contained. I knew we were going to be okay. But I had been watching my brother, who'd had a diabetes diagnosis for like the past 8 years. He'd already lost a leg. He was on dialysis. And I knew, as I was watching him slowly die, that was my future, because there was no reason that it wouldn't be. There was no reason that wasn't going to be me. And so I joined Weight Watchers that night. And 15 months later, I reached goal, lost 106 pounds. I've been on maintenance for 3 months. My primary care doctor, Dr. Demetriadis, has been my biggest supporter, cheerleader, and just ecstatic. And I thought, what's the difference this time than the other 87 times that I tried to do this?
Yeah. What is the difference? So many patients want to know. I want to know.
So the biggest difference was this. One, I decided to be grateful that I had time, because I was watching a lot of people. My window in my office overlooks the wound care center. And I watch people every day, very young people, come walking in there come walking in with one leg. They're in wheelchairs. They've lost both legs, morbidly obese. They are sick. They are struggling. But the biggest motivation for me was I was watching my brother, who I loved with all my heart. I was watching him do something I wasn't sure I could do, which was be that brave. And so I changed my entire approach from feeling sorry for myself, for being angry, for feeling punished, to just being grateful that I have time. And so every day I was grateful that I was able to make the decisions to eat healthy, to take care of myself. And I didn't want to put my husband and my daughter and my grandsons through everything that I'd been watching my brother go through, because I just didn't want him to have to take care of me when I was 65 and not have a leg. I mean, I couldn't do it. So every single day, every single meal, every single snack, I was relentless, and something clicked. The biggest thing was I felt I had my head, my heart, my environment, and my resources, and my reasons for doing what I needed to do all came together, and it clicked. It just clicked.
So inspirational. I hope for our listeners out there that hearing your story helps them put those pieces together. I think you and I talked about it our first conversation and the ones to follow about how important your head is and how important the mental aspects of why we overeat, why we over-desire, why we desire sugars and fats compared to the foods that are healthy for us, and how that plays into it. For those of you listening, I'll put some of the resources that Gretchen and I talked about on our website and the notes page so that you can have access to those as well. But I think the mental space is so important. Not as many people talk about having the heart for the work. And, there's so much research in gratitude and how anger at yourself and no amount of self-shame or self-blame will motivate you to improve yourself.
You cannot hate yourself or shame yourself to health. You cannot do that, but you can love yourself to health. I think for me, I finally decided to work on my relationship with food. And I realized after a while, if I worked on the relationship with food, why I was eating what I was eating, why I was gravitating towards certain things, the scale would follow. And it did. It absolutely did. But I also learned my poor body, because I was eating such garbage most of the time, but just like everyone else, fast food, what was convenient, what was easy. And for my entire life, I never had an off switch. I could eat forever, all day long. And at no point did my body go, you're full, right? Because I was never feeding it any nutrients. It was starving for something it could use. And within 2 weeks, after eating pretty much sugar-free and low carb, my brain switched off. And it said, you're full now. And I'd never experienced that before, ever. And all the anxiety around food, because I was always worried there was never going to be enough food. I don't know why. There's always been enough food, but there just was so much anxiety around it. But what I learned was I'm addicted to sugar.
Yes.
That my brain thinks when I eat sugar and really highly processed food, it thinks it's crack. And so, of course, it wants more. And that's what I've learned. So I had a donut about 9 months into my weight loss program, and it was just eating healthy food. I didn't do anything weird. And I was starving all day long from that donut. And I thought, it's not worth it because I'm anxious all day long from one donut. So I don't really eat donuts anymore, though I love them. So I learned how my body pays attention to what I put in it. When I give it stuff that it can work with, it's fine.
Right. And it feels satisfied. It feels happy.
It does.
You said to me, you forget how good you can feel when you feel bad all the time from food. And it is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So tired at the end of the day, too tired to cook, and how energizing good food is. And drinking the right amount of water and all of those things.
Yeah, the water came a little bit later. I struggled. I didn't drink anything, but I certainly didn't drink water. Now I drink my appropriate share of water. Yeah, I think there is a sharpness that happens, a brightness, and certainly one of the first compliments I started getting was that my skin looked very different, that I looked very bright. And I thought, wow, what did I look like before? And I know what I looked like before because I remember what I felt like, which just it took all the energy I had to get through the day. And now, of course, I have a lot more energy. I feel a lot better. I look better. Shopping is way more fun. There's no question. But the fact is that I waited a really long time to take care of myself and do what I knew I was supposed to be doing. My head got in the way. And once I approached it with gratitude that I had time to make the changes, I have a healthy A1C. I am not on blood pressure medicine anymore. I'm not on pretty much anything anymore. My labs are normal. I'm healthy as a horse.
It's amazing.
I am doing things now that I would have never done before because I wouldn't have had the confidence to really do it. I'm not any smarter than I was before, but I certainly see myself very differently. So it's not surprising to me that other people do as well.
So before we get any deeper in our conversation, I know our listeners are dying for your top weight loss tips.
So very first, most important thing is drink your water. You have to drink your water. It not just fills you up, but it starts a healing process that you need to get started. Number 2 is prep your food. The number one thing that I think contributed to my success is I prepared my lunch every single night, even if it was 10:30 and I didn't feel like it. I had to make sure that I knew what I was going to have for lunch tomorrow because I could prepare my breakfast and I knew I was going to be able to control my dinner, but lunch is sometimes where it gets you messed up. Number 3 is shop around the perimeter of that grocery store. So it really is all about fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. I also made sure on Sunday afternoon that I roasted off vegetables for the rest of the week so that no matter what the protein was, I had healthy sides that I could put with it. I always made sure that I had healthy options so that if my first idea that I thought I was going to have for a dinner or lunch or whatever, I always had plan B. I always made sure I had healthy snacks. That was really important. Nobody goes without snacks. You got to have them. Number 4, you eat the food you love. Don't start eating diet food. We don't want to do that. So I either lightened up what I loved or I ate less of it. The other thing is I made sure I weighed and measured because our eyes are way bigger than we think they are. So it was really important, and I still weigh and measure what I eat because I don't want to short myself nowadays. And I think the number 1 most important thing is gratitude. It just is approaching this as it's a gift, and you're happy to be able to treat yourself so well. Once your head is in the game, the rest of it is so much easier.
I love that in 9 weight loss tips, you didn't once mention exercise.
Oh, because I didn't.
Well, and there's so much new science that says that weight loss is 90 to 95% what we put in our bodies, and that there's no amount of walking that can make up for a diet of French fries and even Diet Cokes.
And it's true. And so I have really bad neuropathy in my feet. So it's really, walking is even hard for me from a long distance. But I wanted to focus on what I was eating, and I was having such great success. I'm still looking for that one really fun thing to do that I want to show up and do every day. Somebody recommended pole dancing. That may be it, but it certainly isn't riding a stationary bike, which I just find painful. So I think everybody's got to find what they want to do, and then it happens more organically. I think forcing ourselves is not the way to go.
I think that's perfect. Joy in movement. For me right now, it's dancing in the kitchen with my kids.
I think that's fantastic. That's the best exercise there is, right?
Yeah, and that is a great place for us to take a break to talk about another community organization that we partner with for cancer patient and survivor support. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is a global leader in the fight against cancer. The LLS mission is to cure leukemia, lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, and myeloma, and improve the quality of life for patients and their families. LLS funds life-saving blood cancer research around the world, provides free information and support services, and is the voice for all blood cancer patients seeking access to quality, affordable, coordinated care. Since 1949, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society has invested nearly $1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, in groundbreaking research, pioneering many of today's innovative approaches. LLS works tirelessly to find cures and ensure that patients can access life-saving treatments they need. When someone experiences the fear and uncertainty of a cancer diagnosis, LLS provides hope, compassion, education, and support. For more information, visit lls.org. We haven't yet talked about the intersection of you as the patient and you as a leader in a major healthcare organization. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that aspect of your job?
Sure. So I oversee graduate medical education and undergraduate medical education at a community hospital. So when physicians graduate from medical school, they have to do medical residency. And we started a family medicine residency program, and we'll be starting an internal medicine program. And so I oversee all of that.
And I love that you are integrally involved with how residents learn to take care of patients. What would you want your residents to know about how to take good care of a patient?
So one of the reasons I got into graduate medical education is because I wanted to be on ground zero. Because my background in health communication, specifically provider-patient communication and rapport building, puts me in a position where I get to talk with residents and I get to train residents on how to talk to patients. And it's really important to me that they understand that they have to approach patients as a partner, not as a jury and judge, but as a partner, and that they have to build that partnership with patients so that they feel safe, that they have to make sure that patients trust them because they're going to be talking about really vulnerable things. There's nothing more vulnerable, I think, than your health. And they have to be able to trust the physicians that they're going to take care of them and that they have their best interests at heart. And so when I talk to my residents, I talk a lot about how to broach really uncomfortable topics like losing weight, like giving bad news. That's a really hard thing to do, and I know in your job you do that a lot, unfortunately. It's not any easier to be on the other side of it.
Sure.
But I do use my story, my being a cancer survivor multiple times, being diagnosed with diabetes, having been an obese patient for so many years. And we have a lot of hallway conversations about how do you talk to a patient when you know whatever you say they're not going to listen, that they won't listen. And I say, well, then you got to change how you approach, right? You got
Exactly.
you've got to meet them where they are and help them take a step. They don't. We also have to redefine, and I tell them this all the time. We have to redefine what we consider success.
Absolutely.
Right? So a patient like myself who had to lose 100 plus pounds, if the only definition of success was when I lost that 106th pound, well, that's ridiculous because number one, it's overwhelming. And number two, what do we do in the meantime? Do I still feel bad all that time?
Right.
So is it all or nothing? I maintain that if somebody needs to lose 100 pounds, if they come back next time and they didn't gain any weight, that's a win.
Absolutely.
If they have to quit smoking and they cut back by 2 cigarettes or they didn't smoke anymore, that's a win. So we have to meet people where they are.
Absolutely. And I think just what you were saying, being grateful, being a cheerleader, being a resource and a coach, the no shame game, the no blame game is all an important component of change.
It is, and I also think just asking the question, what can I do to help you? What do you need from me? Because quite often when we're coming at it from the physician side versus the patient side, what physicians think patients need from them is not what patients necessarily need from them. So it's a really important question because we all go in with our assumptions about what the other person needs, and we're usually wrong. So I don't know why we don't ask.
It's so true. That's such a good point. That, once again, not surprising from a PhD in health communications, you have led us straight into one of the other things that we really are trying to focus on this season. We want to talk more about the community that surrounds a cancer patient. We do focus a lot on the physician-patient relationship, making sure patients have the right amount of information when they go into the doctor's office. But there's so many more people involved, not only on the healthcare team side, but out in the community in terms of resources and availability, even the friends and family that you speak with about their experiences going through the same thing. What does community mean to you?
So I've been really blessed. Every time I've had cancer, I've been surrounded by family and friends who could not be more generous. When I had cancer the second time, my brother came down and he cooked for me because I had to eat a 0 sodium diet because back in those days they had to take you off your medicine and you had to eat no salt, which is easier said than done. And we would come up with creative ways to cook and come up with things. This time, my husband could not have been more supportive and generous. I mean, you want to see what your relationship is like, go through a radical hysterectomy and then have to recover from that. I mean, that is closeness personified. It really was. But community for me has been certainly my family and friends, and my work environment. They could not have been more supportive. But I think one of the places that I'm probably not as connected to are the community groups, the support groups, the folks who have really been through this before, or if not, they were caregivers and they want to provide your support. I wasn't as good at that as reaching out and searching out for that kind of support, because not everybody has a lot of folks who can help them through these things. And there's so many groups out there who are really just waiting for you.
I totally agree. And I think different people need different things. As
True.
you said, there are people who are more extroverted, who want to share or to be in a community of survivors or a community of cancering patients. Mm-hmm. I think there's those of us who are more introverted who might find our community in a podcast like this, or in a more anonymous type of group like a Facebook group or something like that. Mm-hmm. But as you said, I think there's so many places to find community. I think there's another piece of it, though, also you coming to share your story. I think the final stage of healing in cancer, we think about the physical healing, we think about the mental healing from the cancer diagnosis, being able to deal with the anxiety or fear or recovery and kind of how that goes. And then for me, I think the final piece is really that turning that negative into a positive. And I think that's another place that these cancer groups and cancer communities can be so vital, is taking your experience and using it to help another person. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you join the support group and be the caregiver or any of those things. It can be something as simple as sharing your story with all of our listeners.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think, number one, everybody gets something different from your story, right? And I think with all of the Facebook groups and the online support groups and all of those things, it's really important that you get help from somewhere when you need it. I just don't want anyone to go through these things alone, because they're really hard. And I think you can really get in your head if you don't have other people to interact with. So I think it's really important. But everybody I know knows I'm a cancer survivor, and everybody I know, whether they want to know or not, knows I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, because I wear that somewhat proudly. And I think sometimes, how did I get so lucky? How did I get so blessed that I survived cancer 3 times? And I have no idea, except I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to do something with it. So I'm always looking for opportunity to talk with people and talk with my residents to make sure that they understand the perspective of the patient, so that maybe the next patient they interact with, they'll be a little more kind or a little more humble or connected. If that's what comes out of it, then I'm good.
Well, along those lines, you were named 100 Successful Women to Know on the Gulf Coast. And I was curious how you felt like your cancering journey contributed to that success.
Nobody was more surprised. I found out by an email that I had been nominated, and nobody would tell me how or who. And I went to a function and found out that literally 692 people were nominated for this honor. And finally, my team came clean and said that as a group effort, they had nominated me, filled out the application, and sent it in. With that said, I felt like I'd won the lotto. I mean, there was no bigger honor than that. The fact that I was actually chosen as one of those 100 women to know on the Gulf Coast, I was shocked. But I will tell you that they asked us to submit a bio, and in my bio, I put that I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. And I think that resonates with people. I think they saw not just a successful person in business, they saw a successful person in life, somebody who has been through it a little bit. And so I expect that it's just part of the package now. And I'm very vocal about it. I don't hide it. I think it is. And when I first got diagnosed 20 plus years ago, I talked about it a lot because I felt if I said the word cancer all the time, it wouldn't carry the same power over me. I don't know if that worked or not, but that's what I did. So I've never been shy. I've never been embarrassed about it.
You know, there used to be a time when people wouldn't give somebody a job who'd been a cancer survivor because you never know if the cancer is going to come back, or wouldn't promote somebody who had had a cancer diagnosis recently because they might not be around. I'm so glad we are well past those times, but I love that it's such a part of your story, that it's such a part of who you are and your grit and your resilience and your gratitude.
It is, and it's on my LinkedIn profile, right? So it's out there for everybody to see. It's also, I find people will reach out who have also, they're either going through cancer or they have been fighting through cancer. So I do think it connects us on a much larger level with people who you might not have ever connected with. That one piece will bring you together. If it's only for a second, or you're doing great, or I'm so glad you're here. That's why I put it out there. So if somebody needs me, I'm here. And sometimes I reach out to them. I've reached out to someone who's in Scotland, and we've developed this lovely little friendship on LinkedIn, who went through much, much, much more traumatic outcomes than me. But he's still standing, I'm still standing, and we celebrate each other because we know we got work to do.
I think that's amazing. And as you said, if it's just that somebody is a little easier because of your story, it means all the world.
I hope so, because certainly people did that for me.
Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our conversation, every time we speak, how much I take away from your journey and your joy and your gratitude. So thank you for sharing that with our listeners.
Thank you, and thank you for everything you do. I tell you, you made it a whole lot easier than it probably should have been.
Gretchen, you mentioned that you were on LinkedIn. Is that the best way for folks to find you?
I think it's probably the easiest way to find me. So you'll find me under Gretchen Norling Holmes, Norling, Holmes. Very easily found on LinkedIn. So please reach out if you want to say hi or if I can help in any way.
Wonderful. We'll also have that on the show notes page. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
What a great episode with my patient and my friend, Dr. Gretchen Holmes. I love how she's so open and willing to share all of her feelings related to her health, weight loss struggles, and not being defined only by cancer, which is so helpful for all of us when we want to be healthier and happier. And what an inspirational story about how she made really big changes in her life for the better and was able to sustain them. I feel like if she can do it, so can the rest of us. I personally was very inspired by the different places where she found strength and inspiration in her daily life, things she would see that she could look to for ongoing inspiration and strength. Gretchen, thank you for being here and for being a role model for all of us. And for all of you out there, thanks again for listening. Be healthier, be happier, and remember, cancering affects us all. Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to submit your questions at www.cancering.com. We're going to be doing 2 special episodes throughout the season. We're here for all of those questions and we'll get you the answers. This show is brought to you by the University of South Alabama Mitchell Cancer Institute. MCI is a cutting-edge cancer research and patient center built to fight cancer smarter in Mobile and Baldwin County, Alabama. Our researchers and clinicians focus daily on the struggle against cancer, serving a potential catchment population of more than 4.1 million people, with a singular focus of advancing cancer diagnosis, treatment, and prevention throughout the Gulf Coast and beyond, with science, technology, and hope. Want to know more about the Mitchell Cancer Institute? Visit us at usamci.com or search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mitchell Cancer Institute is a member of USA Health. To learn more about all of our hospitals, clinics, and services, visit usahealthsystem.com.